Hello again, friends and fans. Raptor here, and welcome back to Men of War Assault Squad 2 in our tutorial series that continues with attacking flags at the beginning of a multiplayer match. Previously, we covered defenses and all things defenses, and now we're going to go on the offensive and start capturing flags here in Men of War Assault Squad 2 for the RobZ Realism mod, and we're in the Assault Zones game mode. If you'd like to see more of this, make sure you click or tap or blow up or destroy that like button, and let me know you'd like to see more tutorials. If you need any help or whatnot, comment down below on what you'd like to see, and I'd be happy to oblige. If you'd like to download this mod as well, make sure you check down below in the description and go ahead and download it via the Google document. And this should be a very basic tutorial on how to get started. We have three positions here that you may have seen just a second ago. On the right flag, or the right flank, we have a large windmill here in an open farm field area. In the center, we have a kind of a little farm town here, or a little farmstead that has a lot of cover and buildings. And on the left side, we see a little bit of a pond or a marshy area that leads out to a river. And we're going to try to capture all three here today. First and foremost, the most important thing to do in Men of War Assault Squad 2 is to know what faction we're playing with and how to use these weapons. And today, we'll be playing with the United States. The American troops are here. We're going to launch an attack with assault squads, which you get at the very beginning of the game. You can see some of these other units are locked as we need to get points over time in order to call them out onto the field. So your choices at the beginning are fairly limited. We're going to go ahead and call out an assault squad now and have them capture the position in the center, as it's going to be the most important. We know that already because we have spawned here on the left side, and we know now that the enemy is going to spawn on the right side because it's a mirrored map. And so thus, if we spawn on the left, they'll spawn on the right, somewhere around here, around these large barns. So the battle is probably going to be in the center, as the enemy spawns closest to this flag here. The enemy is more than likely going to be able to capture and keep this point from us first, while we are going to battle it out with them in the center, and then less likely over here on what would be our right side, over here at the pond. Alright, we're going to go ahead and capture then with these troops, and one of the most important things you should learn to do first in Men of War is to double-click. If you double right-click, it'll make your troops run, which means that you'll go there faster. It also makes vehicles move faster as well at top speed. So one click, you'll listen to this, and it'll sound like they're marching through the woods and such. But if you double-click, you'll hear a difference in their feet, and you'll know that they're actually running. Listen to the difference. So you can hear them all now. And you can hear the thundering footsteps as the U.S. Army advances now to an area of cover. Now the enemy, if they arrive here before you or at the same time, they're probably going to battle it out with you as you're trying to capture the flag. And looking at the natural terrain here, and by natural I just mean it comes with the map as you immediately play. No players have built this. We have immediate threats on the field. We see multiple trenches that the enemy could use for cover. Right down here, they could easily move down into this position here, so enemy forces are more than likely going to arrive in cover, so we need to be careful for that. Our troops are laying down here by going prone in the lower areas, so that way we're harder to see and also harder to kill. So we're going to send a few troops over here to this broken fence that we see, where we can sneak into the area in the center. Now keep in mind, multiplayer games are played extremely quickly, so you won't have time to do all these things, and that's where players who are micro, which means that they're very good at all the small actions which make a huge difference, such as throwing grenades, can really benefit. Infantry combat is one of the most difficult and very important and basic parts of the game, so keep in mind that it's a very good learning experience. We're going to crawl into the flag here now and pretend as if the Germans are nearby. We're going to go ahead and try to dislodge them from some of their positions that they may have captured. In the meantime, we know that SMGs are very important here, and the reason I called out the assault squad was because we're in a very tight area. All these buildings and windows and areas to attack from means that a typical SMG trooper is a little bit more effective in this type of environment. So, for example, the assault squad lead here has an SMG. He has the Thompson submachine gun, which means that if a German peeked his head out of that window or that door, they can easily unload on it and hit him in one shot, as where a rifleman has to shoot a few times, and it can be a little slower. Time is of the essence, and speed is key when it comes to capturing these enemy positions and taking the lead. If the enemy approached via the trench, by the way, we could see over here that if we select our grenade, and remember to always select hotkeys when it comes to placing a grenade or getting one out onto the field, that we're going to cook this grenade by holding it in our hand for a few seconds, then throwing it, and the grenade might be off, as, yeah, RobZ Realism does that a lot too, where grenade tosses are off, so sometimes it'll take more than one. It seems to be a little strange to throw grenades here, but keep on the target. And there we go. Sometimes I move my mouse beforehand, but you can see no matter what, the grenade goes off a little bit. But that's the good thing with the grenades. They have large areas of explosions. And one thing here that's important to note is that if the enemy was down here in cover, those grenades may have eliminated those enemies. So right now we have this flank defended because we have our troops sitting here, so it would be hard for the enemy to cross without taking too much fire. And we've also blocked them over here too. And we'll want to look for areas where we can take cover, such as all of this debris here. Wood is a good position for cover, but it can be easily destroyed, as where concrete and bricks and other things are a little bit harder to destroy. But if we had an enemy soldier nearby hiding in cover, and one great way to eliminate cover so it can't be used by the enemy is to use anti-tank grenades in order to just throw it. And there you go. You've deleted the box that was there. And so now the enemy can't approach that way. And we have a clear line of sight, too, in order to see them approaching. So now we have line of sight, and we have the ability to lay down fire as they're approaching. Enemy infantry might end up killing some of ours, so always leave a reserve force or a small part of your squad behind so you can reinforce. And as you approach, make sure you run close to the flag and then get down into prone position as you get closer to avoid enemy fire and avoid detection. Over on the left side, we're going to go with a rifle squad this time. We're going to go with a rifle squad with 2 BARs, which stands for Browning Automatic Rifle, which is essentially like a U.S. machine gun, but it's more of like a beefed-up assault rifle. So as we did before, we're going to double right-click, so that way we can get all of our troops up to the front at high speed. And you can see we get a pretty substantial squad. The United States gets a very large squad compared to some of the other factions, and there's a lot of men here that we can use to set up defenses. So we're going to have our men approach and start crawling, so that way we can get into the flag and try to be under cover. Let's go ahead and make sure we're laying down there. There we go. And we're going to start taking advantage of areas of natural cover. It is unlikely that we're going to engage the enemy over here since we're so far away from their spawn, but it is likely that it might happen, but unlikely. So we're going to go ahead and take cover behind some large natural cover, such as this rock. And we can also set up cover, too, in RobZ Realism by using breastwork of either laying down sandbags or digging a foxhole for our troops. In this case, we probably want to take advantage of the elevated height that we have over here. We're going to set up a couple of little positions to set up a machine gun post with our BARs that we have. That's the specialty of this squad, is that they get Browning automatic rifles. So let's have 2 of our regular riflemen build some breastwork pointing both the southwest side and almost north. So that way they can stay in cover and provide fire. Alright, this position has been captured by our troops, and they're nicely spread out in the back too, so if the enemy came close, it's unlikely that they're going to throw a grenade and eliminate us. Let's find our BAR gunners. There was one of them. We also have a bazooka here, and the Americans have a very good ability at anti-tank. It's a very important thing to keep your bazooka men back and away from the main battle until they're needed in a firefight against a vehicle. If you keep them up front, it's likely that they could perish in the firefight. They are equipped, of course, with some anti-infantry weapons, SMGs and rifles in this case, but with the AT trooper in the back, we can bring him up to the front when the situation calls for it. So right now we've captured 2 of our 3 flags. We're going to go ahead and get our BAR gunner up on the line and make sure that we put our troops on the right side of cover, so that way they can fire back at the enemy. We're going to see if we can find another BAR. Let's see where our other one went. Sometimes it can be hard to find your troops, and when you're in a firefight, sometimes you won't have the time to fully deploy your defenses, but it looks like our second one's here. So the great thing about taking this position and building defenses here is that, 1, we can defend this flag with minimal staff and minimal infantry, meaning we can pull back most of these men to divert them to the fight that's probably going on in the center. And we can also cover our position over here and assist from stopping the enemy from flanking. So this whole area here is now under the watchful eye of our riflemen and our BAR gunners. So as you can see here, the US BAR has about a 100-meter range, or 100 whatever, however the game measures. I think it's meters, but as you can see, they have a clear line of sight, or, well, at least they have a clear area to shoot anything that they see around here, and they can easily shoot at approaching infantry over here. So for example, if we shoot this way, you can see that we can light up anyone who comes this way. Now, another important thing, as I told you, was line of sight. So make sure that if you're defending areas, you also have troops such as this one in front, so they can actually see if there's enemies there. The enemies can sneak and hide and get past you if you don't have troops on the front to actually watch them. So you do need troops for line of sight. If you have a tank, it's best that you also call out some troops in order to give you a little bit of breathing room around the tank so they can see threats coming to destroy that tank. So let's pretend that we just captured this area. We're going to pull these troops back and divert them to elsewhere in the battle. We're going to leave a few of them there, including our anti-tank trooper and a couple of our watchful eyes of our riflemen who are out there just kind of watching. The most fire the Germans will take when they approach are from the troops up here up top because we have an elevated position and also BAR guns up there, so it's going to be quite nice for them. Now, we're going to pull these troops back, and you know what we can do is create a reserve. So let's pretend as if the enemy is already attacking our center, and again, in another series, we'll go over what it's like to attack a defense in the early game. There's many stages to RobZ Realism and at Men-A-War in general, so we don't want to drown you in too much information at the start, so that's why we're starting basic for now. But one basic thing you can do at the very start of the game, too, after capturing a couple positions, is bringing up a mortar. The M1 81mm mortar for the Americans will be perfect in defending the center against a constant enemy attack. And since they have the ability to use those trenches you saw earlier, it's going to be very key for us to destroy the enemy while they're in cover. We'll move these men over here, so that way they can defend the mortar and be in a what I call a jump-off position. So that way when the enemy attacks or captures the center, we now have a reserve of infantry nearby in order to, 1, protect the mortar, and 2, to go into the center whenever the enemy has captured it or is attempting to capture it. Additionally, we're going to want to call out heavy ammunition to supply that mortar constantly with rounds. And of course, the heavy ammunition, as you may have seen in our defense series, can be used to resupply pretty much anything. Anything that fires more than a 50 cal round. For example, a tank shell or an anti-tank shell or, in this case, a mortar. Those are all resupplied by weapons such as the, weapon support, which is the heavy ammo crate. We're going to get these two crewmen off here, too, by pressing G. And it's a good idea to always defend your weapons like this. So luckily we have some natural cover here. By that, again, I just mean the the breastwork that was here by default. And we're a little less elevated, too. We're not as high up, which makes this position a little harder to destroy. So enemies can't really directly fire on us unless they have their own mortar. So fire will be raging here. Let's say the enemy's occupying this position and they're attacking over here. These troops will have to constantly be reinforced all the time by having our friendly troops continue to get on the line and hold the Germans back. They'll be continuously attacking from here and there, and so our mortar is going to suppress them. While the enemy's distracted in the center, we're going to get another attack going on the flank. And one thing we can do then is get an assault squad over here. This is a much more open area than before, so we can use a mix of either rangers or riflemen or even assault squads, as there's a little bit of cover on the right side. It might be hard for the enemy to see us here as we're not approaching the flag directly, but also to call in a regular rifle squad here because there's lots of defensive positions. So let's do that. We'll call up a regular rifle squad and have them double time it over here. Again, remember, double right click in order to get your troops to move at full speed, and they'll come over here. This is a bad move, by the way, if you're moving across an open field where there's fighting. If, for example, the Germans had troops over here, we don't want to just run past them, and the entire squad will be liquidated in seconds. And you know what we need as well to continue our attack is we're also going to call up an anti-aircraft gun, too, and I'll show you what the benefits of attacking and defending with an anti-aircraft gun are. Alright, the mortar mission is over. Let's say the Germans have been successfully suppressed, and we'll see ourselves attacking as the Germans in the next episode. I can't wait. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already so we can continue to show you all the nice tips and tricks over the years. 40mm M1 Bofors L60 is what we're going to be calling up here today. Already attached to the truck, a GMC CCKW 353, which will be moving it around the battlefield, and also it has the ability, I believe, to resupply it. Let me just check real quick. No, it does not. So if you need to resupply your anti-aircraft gun, make sure you purchase one of those heavy ammunition crates to supply it later on. Mortars always constantly need supply. Anti-aircraft can take a little bit of time. They don't need as much supply as they have plenty of rounds with them, but you'll need to resupply it at some point. Alright, so let's say that the enemy already occupies this flag or has minimal troops around it because they arrived first. It's closest to their spawn, so it makes sense. We're going to drive over here, and I'm actually going to set up our mortar, or our artillery piece over there. And speaking of mortars, by the way, a quick lesson about mortars as well, or emplacements in general. The enemy team has the ability to communicate, and they have the ability to press the N key, as in Nathan, or Nate, or Nebraska. If they press that, for example, they might say, hey, enemy mortar here, over by the sandbags. If you place your weapons out in an open field, like here, it might be harder for enemies to hit you. For example, if you have a Hummer, or Hummel, or perhaps a Priest out in this field, the enemy might not know if it's here, or here, or here. But if you put something close to a landmark, let's say, for example, the tractor that was over here, if you have a mortar that's, if I move my mortar up and put it there, they could easily say, hey, mortar left of the tractor, or to the right of the tractor. So keep in mind, if you are putting emplacements down, sometimes it's best to put emplacements out in the open. Another good thing we might want to call up, too, is the 50 cal Browning M2 tripod, or the 30 cal. In this case, The 50 cal is really capable of destroying enemy vehicles. It can shred German armor and light tanks with ease. So keep in mind that anytime you have a vehicle or a position that you can cover vehicles with, or without having to buy a vehicle, make sure you do that. This is an emplacement that'll be very useful in suppressing the Germans as they make their advance. One thing we can do with this too is we can open fire on anyone who approaches on this side. So if the Germans bring over a light vehicle to try to attack that area, or a light vehicle over to the farm field, the gun can be easily moved from one position to the other. Keep in mind there's a new function in RobZ Realism 2 that allows you to change the fire mode from burst to full auto. So the 50 cal will be fired in burst mode unless you select full auto. And in this case, we're going to change to full auto because that's the way Jesus intended it. So let's go ahead and let's see if we can build some camouflage here. We're going to put some concealment on our troops. So they'll automatically build like a little bush there. And it's as if they were putting up camo netting or something to make it harder to see. So the Germans will have a harder time of getting to this position. Now this probably is not the best position for a machine gun. You see all the hard cover that the Germans have to approach from? That's probably going to make it really difficult for us to hit. Even if they expose themselves for a quick second to pass through gaps, it's only very quickly. So this is probably not the best position for a gun, but it is a very good position as it is elevated and in our lines. So if we're defending, this is probably the best position for it, though this is more of an offensive defense, which means that we have the ability to kill the enemy out here rather than waiting till they get the defenses back here. We can also use this weapon for the offensive as well. If we brought it up instead of the anti-aircraft gun, we could use it like this as well. It's very good over here, though. A enemy vehicle will make a nice little silhouette on the horizon, and we can easily shred it. So there you go. That can pass right through anything, really. There we are. So even sandbags and such can be cut through. Keep in mind that light materials such as these boxes can be shredded by that 50 cal. So even if the, for example, if you're playing against the Soviets, their Dishka has the ability to cut through all of this wood and buildings and can cut right through. SMGs and rifles can't cut through that kind of stuff. And grenades cannot destroy buildings and walls. They can destroy cover, though. So sometimes, again, it might be useful for you to throw a grenade to get rid of cover. But also keep in mind that the more important thing, whoa, sorry, Jim, is to call out anti-tank grenades to blow up walls, or TNT, that type of thing. All right, let's go ahead and get some F's in chat, by the way, for Jim. All right, now let's go ahead and put our anti-aircraft gun down, and we're going to move this into position. And this is our next lesson now. A little later in the game, after the initial start, more vehicles and more equipment starts to become unlocked, and at this point, it's probably likely that the Germans have called out a light vehicle of some sort to assist in their attack or possibly their light defense of a position. Now, even though the game is early, that doesn't mean the enemy hasn't captured it. And there are two modes to the 40mm M1 Bofors L60. Two modes meaning two ammunition types. One is armor piercing, and the other is high explosive. High explosive, as you would imagine, is great against infantry, and it's also very good against buildings, as we're armor piercing. This almost makes this thing like a, really think of it as a high explosive, or rather a high fire rate anti-tank rifle. So this is a 40mm that can fire really quickly, and is very good at destroying enemy vehicles, even better than the 50 cal, because it can really slice through enemy vehicles at a distance, and wonderful pieces of cover like that. If the Germans, for example, occupied that barn and were firing at us, you arm it up with armor piercing or even HE rounds, and it'll liquidate that building. Let's switch to HE now, and let's see how that operates a little bit, and we can just bring down the house by firing all on that position. I think that actually might kill troops inside there whenever roofs attack. If the enemy had a machine gun up inside that windmill, all we got to do is fire a few rounds up into there, and there goes the windmill. So this is very good at devastating light enemy vehicles, infantry squads, and eliminating enemy cover. And even, we might even have the ability to fire on the enemy as they're getting out of the trench. If the enemy was firing at us from the trench, that's one thing, but as you can see, we were able to fire a few rounds into that trench too, so its direct fire capability is extremely important. Another thing to note, too, is that sometimes in Men of War Assault Squad, flags aren't set up to left or right, they're set up and down. So, for example, if our spawn was down here, and the enemy was in the rear, and we have a position to capture, we might be able to bring up paratroopers. Now, if you select paratroopers like this and call them in from behind, this actually might allow you to lightly attack the enemy if, for example, they only have 1 or 2 riflemen in the back, and let's say the battle's raging on the front, but the enemy really has scarcely defended their behind. well, just like in World War II, you can drop the 101st Airborne or 82nd or whatever you want to call it behind enemy lines. So let's call up some paratroopers. We're going to right-click in order to get it to spawn over here. That large red square is exactly where our troops will likely land from paratroopers. We're going to put them over here because it's very good to put them in some sort of an area near cover. The trenches are probably going to be filled with Germans already since the battle's raging, remember? And we're going to land them right there so we can come up behind the enemy flag. Now, a cool thing is in this game, you know, as you're attacking a front, you can also make it a little easier. Let's say the Germans had a machine gun here and maybe some other troops. We can come up behind with the paratroopers, which should be here any second. There they are. And we can attack from behind. So even lightly defended flags or flags way off in the distance, you can almost sneak up on the enemy. But that noise, that plane that you hear, the enemy's going to hear that too. So keep in mind, you'll probably be immediately detected. One thing you want to do right away, too, is to make sure you hit the deck, so that way enemy units that fire at you will be it'll be a little harder to hit you and then hopefully eliminated by the 101st. But as you can see here, we can come up behind the Germans while we pin them down with our riflemen. So our riflemen would be firing at the Germans all day. Fire will be being exchanged back and forth, MG-34s, MG-42s. Meanwhile, the 101st can be used to sneak up behind the enemy, too. We can maybe use this 30 cal to cut off infantry as they're rushing to the front. So we can really use this for sabotage to capture this flag. We can stop their reinforcements from reaching this flag while our reinforcements are coming up, and then we can lock down the flag by setting up our defense. So we can, you know, put a few troops around like that. And keep in mind, when you are capturing a flag, you should basically be immediately defending the flag, too. So set up defenses right away in order to, you know, get in cover and try to spy on the enemy. Get some concealment, get some cover, and spread out so that way the enemy has a little bit less of a chance to brush you aside with one swoop. All right. Another thing we can show off, too, is advancing under light fire. We can show off some smoke grenades, too. If we use a few smoke grenades here, we can block the enemy's ability to see our advance. So if we didn't have these 101st here, let's just call them back, and let's say we never called them out to assist. Let's go ahead and try to advance under German fire. What we can do is we can set up some smoke grenades here, and that will block the enemy from seeing our movement. Now, any intelligent player would auto-fire on this position knowing that we might attack through it, but what you can do is you can kind of bait your enemy. You can send a few units over to this side and have them then fire on the position over here and then advance through the smoke, or just make them think that you're not going to attack there at all. So smoke is a very useful thing. You can go through it, you can hide in it, and you can also stop machine guns or tanks or whatnot from direct firing on you. It doesn't last forever, so whatever you're going to do, you better do it quick. But it does at least let you get a little closer to the enemy. And keep in mind, if you advance with skilled infantry, they have a much better chance of attacking the enemy. And that's the difference between all these different squads here, is that they're all worth different types of command points, all worth different types of MP. And one thing you can do, by the way, that a lot of players might not know, is if you call out an officer under the individual tab, it actually reduces your CP and then allows you to call out more troops. So if you spend MP on an officer, then you can call out more infantry or tanks. At this point, you can see the battle would already be well underway, as we have access to pretty much all of our tanks now. And one good thing to do is, we'll talk a little bit more about the early game, is that armored cars and light tanks are very effective at the start. For example, the M8 Greyhound here is a really wonderful unit for attacking long distance. In some maps, if you play 4v4, 5v5, or more, you have to travel a great distance in order to get to some of these flags. And if you're going to fight the enemy, you have to be quick about it. So if you call up the M8, you can zip over to, this is a motorized vehicle rather than a tracked vehicle. It's not mechanized, so it has a higher speed. So you can prepare all of your infantry for an attack. And even if we didn't have the Bofors, if we didn't have the airborne, if we didn't have a machine gun over here or whatever else to assist, the Greyhound is huge. The 50 caliber plus the 30 caliber that's on board, plus its 37mm main gun can devastate the Germans. It can eliminate enemy vehicles from a distance. So, for example, if a half-track was coming up with a bunch of troops in it, we could take a shot at the half-track. And then we can also unload on the infantry that bails from the half-track as they're trying to seek cover, so that you can just unload on anybody. There you go, that kind of thing. Now, keep in mind, it's really difficult to land hits in this game, even if you have fully auto. So keep in mind that you always want to use combined arms. If the enemy is attacking elsewhere, if you need to attack elsewhere, always remember to move your mortars. If you see an enemy mortar attacking your mortar, make sure you move. Those are the basics of any attack. And interestingly enough, you always are almost on the offensive more than you're on the attack. The enemy should always constantly be attacking these flags, so remember to constantly buy troops, have jump-off points decided. Like, for example, here, good cover here. If all these troops end up dying, or if you need more reinforcements, you can pull from back here. rather than buying back here where they then have to run. And take a look, even running, how long it takes them to get there. That gives the Germans valuable time to set up machine guns, place mines, which are not really recommended, but it is something you can do. If you do call out mine troops, and the reason I say it's not recommended is because in a multiplayer match you have so much going on that you're probably not going to be paying attention much. So put your AP mines at the exits of trenches, doors, and between buildings. And keep in mind that units such as the British Commandos get access to mines like that. And as you go further and further down the line, American troops, Soviet troops, German, Japanese, whomever, they get better infantry as you go down the line. More expensive, and they have the ability to hit the enemy. They are a lot more accurate. They have better weapons, better training. They have more stamina. So that's why you'll probably want to call out, for example, paratroopers or airborne squads or whatnot if you're defending against a more elite enemy. If the Germans are calling up a lot of elite fighters, you're probably going to want to do the same. Clear them out with a mortar, bring up your infantry, and lock that position down. That's what it's all about. I'm out of lessons for you here today, so if you haven't already, make sure you click or tap that like button to let me know you'd like to see a continuation of this series. Let me know if you have any other questions down below in the comment section or ideas for what we should show off for everyone next in a tutorial. And of course, subscribe if you're new here to see more. Go back and check out that defense video on how to build a defensive line in War Assault Squad 2 next time. We're going to show you what it's like to attack this American position as the Germans. I'll hop into the editor, we'll set up a defense for the Americans, and then we'll attack it as the Germans. Then we're going to switch this script and show some bigger tanks for the Americans, and we're going to counterattack the Germans' attack, and we're going to keep going back and forth to show how to attack bigger and better vehicles and more defended positions. That's it for me now, folks, everybody. I appreciate you being here, so thank you for tuning in. A couple of F's in chat again for Jim, by the way, if you wouldn't mind. He's going to have a bad day. We're going to check our insurance and see if we can pay that injury off, but he's probably fine. But anyway, I'll see you all very soon. Thanks for watching, and again, don't forget to check out your hero units, too, as time goes on, but we'll cover that in a separate episode coming up very soon. Thank you, everyone. Take care, and goodbye.